that none of the injuries was life-threatening, according to the sheriff's office. Shao said that as she and her husband neared the site of Monday's crash, they saw brake lights and then could hardly see the vehicle in front of them as the dust cloud enveloped their car. All of a sudden, it was blackout, she said. Shao said that they were driving west toward their home in Cozad. The couple had to stop a few minutes in a westbound lane. The traffic began moving, and they drove past wrecked vehicles in the median, plus ambulance crews and other emergency responders. Shortly before coming upon the crash site, Shao said they encountered two other dust clouds. Visibility was near zero, she said, but they were past the dust within seconds. Aaron Mangles of the Weather Service in Hastings estimated that dust storms occur 1 or 2 times a year in Nebraska, far less than in the southwestern United States. Dry weather helps to spur the dust storms. April was particularly dry, and near-drought conditions have crept into south-central Nebraska. The York area, for example, is 2 inches below normal precipitation so far this year, according to the Weather Service. Typically, wind gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour are needed for a dust storm, and gusts in the area where the pileups occurred were almost that high. Jen Campana, a spokeswoman for the Nebraska Department of Transportation, said her agency does all it can to mitigate dust on state rights-of-way, but is powerless to control it on adjacent private land. It's spring right now. It's prime field time for farmers who are really behind the clock, she said, because of the late spring. Campana said her department is in consultation with the district offices, and law enforcement makes the call on when to close the interstate, but she said it is closed only to clear crashes or when a roadway cannot be cleared because of ice and snow, not because of visibility problems. State Senator Kurt Friesen of Henderson said he farms right next to the field where Sunday's pileup occurred. Friesen said conditions in the field contributed to the large amount of dust. Rows are planted north and south there, and the field was planted to soybeans last year, leaving less plant debris to hold down the soil. Right now, that dirt is so fine on top, the wind picks it up. It's like a sandstorm, Friesen said. Craig Head of the Nebraska Farm Bureau Federation said there will be less loose dirt on the fields after spring planting, which generally wraps up by the end of May. And here are some tips. If you are caught in a dust storm, you should pull off the roadway in an area where it is safe to do so. Turn on your emergency flashers or hazard lights and headlights. Remain buckled up in the vehicle with the engine running and look for any approaching vehicles. Be ready to take evasive action if needed. And always wait for conditions to improve before moving back onto the roadway. And those tips are from AAA. Beth?
Thank you. The feed of a lone emergency radio and occasional reporter questions were the only steady sounds in Lincoln's remodeled and retooled 9/11 Communications Center in the basement of police headquarters in the County City building on Monday. This will be as quiet as it will ever be, Julie Reichter Dove, the center's communication coordinator, told reporters taking a tour. Next week, dispatchers who have been taking 911 calls and coordinating police and fire calls from a fire station basement will move into the renovated space and begin their noisy work at 18 new customizable bays, she said. The 911 Center's renovation marks the most visible aspect of the $12 million replacement of the city's aging emergency radio system, Lincoln Police Safety Director Tom Cassidy said. 911 Center officials had eyed a remodel for 10 years before the city sought a temporary quarter-cent hike to the sales tax to improve the radio system and build fire stations and a new police substation. Voters in 2015 approved the three-year increase to the city sales tax, and so far it has raked in more than $37 million. The 3 new fire stations and 1 joint police/fire station included in the public safety improvements bond issue should be built over the next 2 years, Cassidy has said. The quarter-cent sales tax will end September 30th, Mayor Chris Beitler said in February. Inside the 911 center, the phone system and software have been upgraded to coincide with a new digital Motorola radio system that will be put in service later this year. The software will be compatible with coming statewide changes to the 911 system, allowing for more accurate locations for cell phone callers and texting to 911, Ryder Dove said. Those improvements were paid for through money the city receives from the Nebraska Public Service Commission and reappropriated funds, she said. Staff will sit at more ergonomic bays where they can raise and lower their seats and monitors, change lighting, and adjust their heating or cooling, she said. The radio system will be moved back from the backup center, Cassidy said, and later this summer, technicians will begin installing the 2,700 new digital radios as the old system is phased out. More than anything we did this so that we could prepare for that, he said. Matthew?
Thank you, Bev. In a time when student walkouts over gun control are frequently in the news, Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts is leaning in to his support for the National Rifle Association. Ricketts plans to speak this week at the NRA's forum in Dallas, where he will talk about the importance of the Second Amendment in 21st century American life and passing on the tradition of responsible gun ownership to the next generation, said spokesman Matthew Trail. Both supporters and opponents say the appearance isn't surprising, but the reaction from each side shows that the NRA is a divisive organization. Papillion Republican Patricia Harold said Nebraska values include support for firearms. I am proud of him actually going to speak at the convention because he's someone who can articulate our tradition and our history and our support for the Second Amendment, she said. But Colby Kloss of Thayer County, a 28-year-old Democrat who lives on a farm, said the decision was pretty tone-deaf, though he said he was already not a fan of the governor. It just seems like he's more interested in focusing on things that are an easy soundbite to put in an email and appeal to right-wing voters, he said. This is not a new stance for Ricketts. The governor had previously invited the NRA to host the convention in Nebraska, and the group's political arm has endorsed him. Vice President Mike Pence is also scheduled to speak at the event, and the White House said Monday that President Donald Trump will also attend. This will be the fourth year in a row that Trump has addressed the NRA, and last year he became the first sitting president to do so. The NRA has been criticized lately for taking a hardline stances on gun rights. Students at thousands of schools in Nebraska and around the country have staged walkouts to protest what they see as lax gun laws after 17 died in the February 14th shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. But there are signs that the NRA still enjoys broad support. The NRA's Political Victory Fund, the NRA political arm, recorded its highest monthly contribution total since 2000, according to an analysis of campaign finance reports by the Florida Sun Sentinel. The NRA's campaign fund collected $2.4 million in March, the highest monthly total in 18 years when adjusted for inflation. About 80% of the contributions were donations of $200 or less. The post-Parkland protests have shown more staying power than the reaction to previous mass shootings, said Kevin Smith, a political scientist at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. But he noted that in largely rural, largely Republican Nebraska, there aren't signs of a fundamental shift in attitudes on guns. I don't see how this really hurts, that there's any kind of political cost to Governor Ricketts for talking at the NRA, he said. Ricketts' campaign spokesman described him as a lifetime NRA member, proud gun owner, and avid sportsman. He also touted the governor's support for signing of a new law that shields gun ownership records from public inspection. State Senator Bob Christ, a Democratic candidate for governor, calls himself a defender of the Second Amendment, but he added, I think there is some responsibility involved with actually owning a weapon. Christ, who served in the Air Force for 21 years, said he would be in favor of banning some military-style weapons. He also said he wants to see measures to make schools safer and to strengthen background checks for gun purchases. Christ also criticized Ricketts for vetoing a bill from State Senator Lynn Walz of Fremont, a fellow Democrat who is running as Christ's lieutenant governor, that would have used private donations to match troubled children and their families with local mental health services. That, Chris said, is a school safety issue. Ricketts' campaign said he vetoed the bill because it forced state government to act as a pass-through for private funds that neglected to address parental rights. School safety is a high priority for Marianne Williamson, a 53-year-old mother who works part-time for Democrat Dennis Crawford's 1st District congressional bid. Williams said it is sad to watch her middle school-age daughter participate in school shooter drills. She said that unlike tornadoes or other types of drills, the number of school shootings is controllable. Ricketts has aligned himself with organizations with no intent of trying to control that, she said. In fact, it's just the opposite. Their solution is to sell more. But the planned NRA appearance has brought more support for Ricketts from voters like 48-year-old Paul Croker of Henderson, who said he's a libertarian-leaning Republican who's not always a Ricketts fan. But strictly speaking, from gun ownership, I totally support him representing Nebraska at the NRA, Croker said. Bev?
Thank you. So many people are dropping off cardboard at Lincoln's free recycling sites that the city has added cardboard roll-offs and begun to pick it up daily at some sites. The city is working with a contractor to keep cardboard roll-offs from overflowing, according to Gene Hanlon, recycling coordinator. The city had installed 19 additional cardboard roll-offs across the city before the landfill ban began April 1st. Since then, the city has been working to add cardboard containers at 5 sites, replacing some newspaper roll-offs with smaller containers, and converting the newspaper roll-offs to cardboard, Hanlon said. At the city's 12 busiest recycling sites, the city's contractor, Von Busch and Sons Refuse, is emptying cardboard roll-offs daily. Hanlon is asking the public for help in keeping the recycling drop-off sites working well with these suggestions. Remove packing material, flatten boxes to better fit and take up less space. Fill the cardboard roll-off from back to front. Many times the front of the containers fill up first, and some people either don't flatten their boxes or just lay the cardboard on the ground, even though there is still room in the container. When that happens, the cardboard mess blocks other people's access to the recycling container. Just because you can see cardboard boxes in the openings of the recycling containers does not mean the container is full. Many times, additional flattened boxes can still slide into the recycling containers. Corrugated cardboard stapled to wood or glued to styrofoam is not recyclable and should go into the trash. Cardboard with paint, oil, food waste, or other organic material is also not recyclable. If there is melted cheese or food residue in a pizza box, it should go in the trash, not the recycling bin, but the top can generally be removed and recycled. If the recycling cardboard container is full, call the recycling office at 402-441-8215 to report and note the location and time of day. Return and recycle after the container is emptied or consider using another nearby drop-off site. If you see businesses or contractors depositing recyclables at the recycling site, call the recycling office to report the company by name. The recycling sites are for household use. City staff will contact the business to discuss subscribing to recycling collection service or hauling cardboard directly to a recycling processor. Businesses that begin or increase their recycling may be I have to find it on our page here. Hold on. May be eligible for an up to $750 rebate. Information about the Waste Reduction and Recycling Assistance Program is available at the Lincoln website. Trash haulers are reporting to the city that residential customers are doing a fairly good job of separating their cardboard and keeping it out of the trash a month after the landfill ban began. Waste haulers can no longer take corrugated cardboard to the landfill under a city ordinance intended to increase recycling and lengthen the life of the city landfill. The collectors also report single-family and duplex rentals seem to be doing a good job, Hanlon said. The collectors and city staff are still working with some apartment complexes to help them get recycling collection service and educate tenants. Some waste hauling companies are still waiting for commercial and residential containers on back order because of the dramatic increase in people wanting recycling service, he said. Matthew?
Thank you, Bev. Well, people who witness a hit and run shouldn't try to follow the person who's fleeing or block them from leaving, Omaha police say. Don't try to be vigilante and the hero that saves the day, Omaha Police Lieutenant John Sokolik said. Apprehend data instead. Sokolik offered tips for potential witnesses of such crashes Monday after a 40-year-old woman was struck by a vehicle at about 8:50 p.m. Sunday as she crossed Ames Avenue near 52nd Street. The vehicle, a newer white Toyota with tinted windows, never stopped, police said. It would have front-end damage. Lisa Hudgens suffered a head injury and was taken to the Nebraska Medical Center, police said. She was listed in fair condition Monday. Hudgens was in the crosswalk and proceeded on a green light, witnesses told police. Sokolik said witnesses should try to get a vehicle description, license plate number, and the vehicle's last direction of travel. Any details such as dealer plates or specific features of the vehicle can give police a starting point, he said. If you can safely take a photo, Sokolik said, that would also help. Occurrences of hit and runs have increased about 10% over the last 3 years, Sokolik said. It's not clear why that is, he said. I can't point to any specific reason other than not being a responsible citizen and a good neighbor and stopping when you get into an accident, he said. Sokolik, who works at the police department's traffic unit, said Omaha's numbers are on par with yearly trends and national averages. A collision is considered a hit and run if it involves a motor vehicle and the driver leaves the scene. That counts crashes in which a driver flees after hitting an object, such as a power pole or after a serious collision involving other vehicles. It is a crime to leave the scene of an accident. It may be a misdemeanor or a felony, depending on the severity of the wreck. In 2015, the average number of hit and runs per month was 390, Sokolik said. This year, monthly averages are about 430. On April 11th, a 31-year-old motorcyclist was killed when a pickup truck ran over him. The driver is awaiting a preliminary hearing on a charge of leaving the scene of an accident involving death. Investigators urge anyone with information about Sunday night's crash to call the Omaha Police Traffic Unit at 402-444-5627. Bev?
The Frank H. Woods Telephone Pioneer Museum, housed in an old building in the new Telegraph District, is shutting down. We've had a pretty good run, said curator Wally Tubbs. We would have liked to have had the opportunity to continue, but it just wasn't happening. Monday, the retired phone company worker was busy at the museum with fellow volunteers, sorting through old photographs and documents that date to the early days of the device that connects us all. We will be selling the artifacts that created the museum down to the floorboards, Tubbs said. Everything's got to go. Antique walnut wall phones and a switchboard from the days of party lines. Pastel princess phones and a double-walled phone booth, candlestick phones and fiddleback phones, and the earliest of cell phones carried in a case bigger than a lunchbox. No firm plans for the site have been disclosed by developers, and a closing date has not yet been set. We hope to move quickly, said Bob Wendell, museum board member, but the exact timing will depend on the sale of the collection, delivering possession of the collection, and the developer's ability to work with us and accommodate both dates. For the past 3 years, board members and others have searched for ways to keep the museum at 21st and M Streets open. We investigated a lot of properties, Tubbs said, but the best choices were the most expensive, and that painted a picture for us that this was going to have to come to an end. The Free Museum, with limited hours, opened in 1996, rent-free, in a building owned by Lincoln Telephone and Telegraph. Volunteers had spent 2 years preparing the building, built as a tire store and later the home of Millie's Cafe, for the public. They moved artifacts already on display at Phone Company headquarters and scoured the country for more, setting up displays that took museum guests time traveling from the days of Alexander Graham Bell to the BlackBerry era. Each time the phone company changed hands, the museum's perch became more precarious, Tubbs said. And when Speedway Properties and Nelnet announced redevelopment plans for the area, affordable options dwindled. At the time, Mayor Chris Beitler announced a 17-member committee to explore alternative museum locations, and in 2016, a group of UNL architecture students drew up plans for a new space. The city supports the Telephone Museum in their efforts to find a new location, a city official said at the time. We view the museum as a Lincoln treasure. Tubbs and his fellow board member view it as a treasure too. They've had tour buses from Alabama, seniors seeking nostalgia, researchers using their library, sororities stopping on scavenger hunts, and school children arriving puzzled. They see a phone hanging on the wall and they're quite confused, Tubbs said. I had a 10-year-old girl ask me how she could text on that phone. The collection is owned by the Frank H. Woods Telephone Pioneer Association, a group of former telephone employees who have kept it going for the past 2 decades. Association and board members have reached out to History Nebraska, formerly the Nebraska State Historical Society, and to phone museums nationally to gauge interest in pieces of its collection. Just last week, hundreds of issues of the trade magazine Telephony, dating to the 1890s, made their way to Hinesville, Georgia, and the National Office and Museum of the Independent Telecommunications Pioneer Association. But for now, the ringing heart of the collection remains in place, Tubbs said. If someone wants to take a tour and phones in here, we'll give them a tour. Matthew?
Thank you, Bev. For one day only, Nebraska State Parks will drop the park entry fee May 19th. The Saturday is officially dubbed Free Fishing and Park Entry Day. The deal is good at every Nebraska State Park, State Recreation Area, and State Historical Park, and it doesn't require a coupon or a secret code. Camping, lodging, and other activities still carry their typical fees, and fishing laws still apply, but getting through the gate won't cost you a nickel. No fishing license is required for it that day. Parks across the state are hosting events to celebrate. And here's a look at what's going on at around the state, not including each park's typical amenities. Willow Creek State Recreation Area in Pierce, Willows and Wings birding hikes, bird identification hikes, and introduction to the eBird Citizen Science Tool. At Fort Kearney State Recreation Area, of scavenger hunts and free fishing. Prizes and lunch will be provided at Lake 6, where scavenger hunt sheets can be picked up. At Memphis State Lake in Memphis, the Youth Shoreline Fishing Tournament will be held from 10 a.m. till noon. Free fishing tournament for ages 4 to 15. Children under 12 must be accompanied by an adult. Registration opens at 8:30 a.m. At Johnson Lake State Recreation Area 1 East in Elwood, Larry Roper Trail Bird Outing will be held. Bird outing led by Master Naturalist. Meet up at the Wildlife Viewing Blind and Park near the trailhead on Drive 28. And at Lake McConaughey State Recreation Area in Ogallala, National Endangered Species Day Pizza Party will be held at 11 a.m. pizza and presentations about endangered species and threatened species of Nebraska. Registration is required. At the Mormon Island State Recreation Area in Doniphan, I'll have a free bird led by a naturalist. Visitors can interact with birds by touching hawk talons, owl skulls, and feathers of some of the park's birds. At Ponca State Park in Ponca, I'll have a fishing derby, prizes for the longest bass, bluegill, and trout, plus a casting competition, worm dig, fish cleaning and cooking, and touch tanks. And at Arbor Lodge State Park in Nebraska City, they'll have lilac walk all day and more than 200 varieties. Admission is $5. And at Wildcat Hills Nature Center in Gering, plan wetland day all day, birding hike, wildflower walk, kids crafts, and other activities. Bev?
Sounds like if you want to do something, you've got lots of things to choose from.
I certainly do.
Now that the weather's settling down, hopefully everybody can get out and enjoy it. We're going to turn now to the obituaries and funeral arrangements in our respective papers. These are the notices in the Lincoln Journal-Star. Franey, Paul Franey, 57, Lincoln, passed away on April 24th. Memorial service will be held at 11 a.m. Friday, May 11th at East Ridge Presbyterian Church in Lincoln. Memorial contributions may be directed toward East Ridge Presbyterian Church. Roper and Sons is handling this. Weichman, Linda L. Weichman McConnell, 53, died April 29th. Memorial services will be held at 10:30 a.m. Friday, May 4th at the First Presbyterian Church in Beatrice. Harmon Wright Mortuary in Beatrice is handling arrangements. Tricht, T-R-I-T-C-H, Albert F. Tricht, 83 of Lincoln, passed away Saturday, April 28th. Memorials may be given to Marion for future designation. Private family services, Colonial Chapel Funeral Home is handling the arrangements. Bauer, Donald J. Bauer, 94 of Fairbury, passed away April 29th. Services will be at 10:30 a.m. Thursday, May 3rd at Grace Lutheran Church in Fairbury. Curtis Meyer Funeral Home in Fairbury is handling arrangements. Gazarian, Gazaryan, Taku Gazarian, 90, died April 29th. There is no other information at this time. Pickle, or Pickell, Roland B. Pickell, 85 of Lincoln, died Saturday, April 28th. Memorials to Parkinson's Foundation or Yankee Hill Cemetery. Funeral service 12:30 p.m. on Thursday, May 3rd at Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home, 6800 South 14th Street. Giannikos, Brad Giannikos, 54, passed away Friday, April 27th. Mass of Christian burial will be 11 a.m. Thursday, May 3rd at the Cathedral of the Risen Christ. In lieu of flowers, memorials may be directed to the Gathering Place Soup Kitchen in Lincoln. Colonial Chapel Funeral Home is handling arrangements. Neiman, George J. Neiman, 74, of Bolivar, Missouri, formerly of Dwight, Nebraska, died April 28th. Mass of Christian burial, 10 a.m. Thursday, May 3rd, Assumption Catholic Church in Dwight. Memorials may be to the family for future designation. Zabka Funeral Home is handling arrangements. Deborah Ann Clark, 64, passed away April 26th. Celebration of life, Friday, June 1st, from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Lincoln Firefighters Reception Hall in Lincoln. Memorials to the family to be shared with pancreatic cancer research and children with diabetes. Obeslaw, Francis S. Bloom, Obeslaw, 98, formerly of Crete, passed away April 24th. At Francis's request, cremation with graveside services will be at 10:30 a.m. Wednesday, May 2nd at Lincoln Memorial. Memorials in lieu of flowers to the Crete Fire Department and Rescue Unit, Capital Humane Society of Lincoln, Bethlehem Lutheran Church, or Haven Manor of Hickman. Arrangements by Consul Funeral Home in Crete. And finally, Bauer, Donald J. Bauer, 94 of Fairbury, passed away April 29th. Services will be at 10:30 a.m. Thursday, May 3rd at Grace Lutheran Church in Fairbury. Curtis Meyer Funeral Home in Fairbury is handling arrangements.
And here are the obituaries from the Omaha World Herald. Bailey, Ferris L. Dick Bailey, retired U.S. Air Force. Funeral services will be held at 11 a.m. on May 4th at the Bellevue Memorial Chapel. Military honors by the Offutt AFB Honor Guard. Bellevue Memorial Chapel, Hefe Hoffman Dvorak Cutler is in charge of the arrangements. Bukowski, Francis M. Bukowski, age 102, passed away April 25th. A massive Christian burial will be held on Wednesday, May 2nd at 10 a.m. at St. Stanislaus Catholic Church at 4002 J Street. Interment will be at St. Mary Magdalene Catholic Cemetery. The Bethany Funeral Home is in charge of the arrangements. Cole, Violet E. Cole, age 69, passed away April 27th. Funeral services will be held Thursday, May 3rd at 10:30 a.m. at Divine Shepherd Lutheran Church at 15005 Q Street, with the reception to follow. The Hefe Hoffman Dvorak Cutler West Center Chapel is in charge of the arrangements. Daniels, Mary L. Daniels, age 74, passed away April 25th. Funeral service will be held at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, May 2nd, with visitation starting at 12 p.m. at the Roeder Mortuary at 108th Street Chapel. The Roeder Mortuary, 108th Street Chapel, is in charge of the arrangements. Dickinson, John A. Jack Dickinson, age 92, a veteran, died April 28th. Vigil service, a massive Christian burial service, will be held Wednesday, May 2nd at 10:30 a.m. at St. Pius X Catholic Church at 6905 Blondo Street. Interment at Calvary Cemetery with military honors. Memorials may be made to the American Legion Post Number 1. Hefe Hoffman Dvorak Cutler West Center Chapel is in charge of the arrangements. Dixon, Shirley, age 81, died April 27th. A celebration of Shirley's life will be held Wednesday, May 2nd at 10 a.m. with visitation beginning 1 hour prior to the service, all at the Bethany Funeral Home Chapel. Bethany Funeral Home is in charge of the arrangements. Dunn, Bob, services will be held, Bob Dunn rather, services will be held on Tuesday, May 1st at 10:30 a.m. The St. Wenceslaus Catholic Church. Memorial suggested to the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. The John A. Gentleman Mortuaries and Crematory is in charge of the arrangements. Franks, Nancy L. Franks, age 63. Memorial service will be held at 12 p.m. on Thursday, May 3rd at the Moser Memorial Chapel in Fremont. Memorials may be directed to the American Cancer Society of Nebraska. The Moser Memorial Chapel is in charge of the arrangements. Gutowski, Susan M. Sue Gutowski, age 64. Memorial Mass will be held Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. at the St. Patrick Catholic Church in Gretna. Memorials may be made to the Special Olympics. The John A. Gentleman Mortuaries and Crematory is in charge of the arrangements. Hannum, Linda K. Hannum, age 58. Funeral service will be held Thursday at 10 a.m. at the St. James Catholic Church. Memorials may be directed to the Special Olympics St. James Catholic Church or the charity of your choice. John A. Gentleman Mortuaries and Crematory is in charge of the arrangements. Hogue, Albert F. Hogue, age 89. Funeral service will be held 11 a.m. Monday at the West Center Chapel. Interment at the Evergreen Cemetery. Heafy Hoffman, Dvorak Cutler, West Center Chapel is in charge of the arrangements. McClenny, Sidney Odell McClenny, age 83, veteran. Memorial service will be held on Thursday, May 3rd at 6 p.m. at the West Center Chapel, with family receiving friends from 5 till 6 p.m. Heafy Hoffman, Dvorak Cutler, West Center Chapel is in charge of the arrangements. Rutledge, Anita L. Rutledge, age 71, passed away April 22nd. Services will be at 1 p.m. Thursday, May 3rd at the Forest Lawn Funeral Home. Visitation 1 hour prior to the service. The Forest Lawn Funeral Home and Cemetery is in charge of the arrangements. Schulting, Edwin R. Schulting, age 72. Services at 10 a.m. Thursday, May 3rd at the Roeder Mortuary at 11710 Standing Stone in Gretna. Memorials to the Springfield Volunteer Fire Department. Roeder Mortuary Gretna Chapel is in charge of the arrangements. Warner, Robbie Warner, age 9, passed away April 28th. Family will receive friends Tuesday from 6 till 8 p.m. at the West Center Chapel. Memorials will be directed to by the family. Heafy Hoffman, Dvorak Cutler, West Center Chapel is in charge of the arrangements. Willman, Sally L. Willman, age 75. Memorial service will be Tuesday, May 2nd at 10 a.m. at the Community of Grace Church in Elkhorn. The Nebraska Cremation Society is in charge of the arrangements. Wolf, John W. Jack Wolf, age 93. A funeral mass will be at 11 a.m. Wednesday, May 2nd at St. Leo the Great Catholic Church at 102nd and Blondo. Memorials to the Mount Michael Abbey or St. Pius X St. Leo School. Heafy Hoffman, Dvorak Cutler, West Center Chapel is in charge of the arrangements. Irv Werdekemper, age 85. Massive Christian burial will be held on Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. at St. Mary's Catholic Church in West Point, Nebraska. The Minnick Funeral Home is in charge of the arrangements. And Zadina, Jane A. Zadina, age 85, passed away April 29th. Complete notice will be later. Heafy Hoffman, Dvorak Cutler, West Center Chapel is in charge of those arrangements.
Listeners' memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and go a long way in keeping Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska, 68152. Thank you for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter.
Thank you very much, Beverly. We'll return to our readers in just a moment. We're tuned to the Radio Talking Book Network. We've been proudly serving our blind and visually impaired listeners for over 43 years. Radio Talking Book is brought to you with the cooperation of KIOS-FM in Omaha and statewide to the facilities of NET Radio and Television. And it's just a touch past 11 a.m., and that means it's time for the senior lunch menus. And here comes Jay Nielsen.
Obituaries do take
Happy May Day. Today is Tuesday, May 1st. And your meals and
those obituaries do take longer than
They
you
do. They do. You know, it'll have, you can cut it down a little bit, but you don't need to make
salad.
You don't need
dressing,
to give the address of the mortuary
Okay.
unless it's an out-of-town one.
Okay.
Like someone, that'll take out some of it.
Yeah.
And
Just a reminder, you can hear
It's
the
just-
senior lunch menu
I
every day. Monday
used to fret a whole lot
through
about
Friday
being
on Radio
bad
Talking
at it, but
Yeah.
the old timers here.
We return
Oh,
to Beverly and Matthew. Let's listen to this public service announcement once again with Jay Nielsen.
I'll do an editorial first.
Okay. So
Hi,
the editorials
This is Jane
Yeah.
Nielsen,
You can read
Executive
that, or you can
Director
read
of Radio
Public
Talking
Pulse
Book
letters.
Service, sharing with you today some information from Outlook,
Whatever
Nebraska.
you want. You probably might have time to do them both. How much time do we
Adaptive
have?
sports
20,
specialists.
no, we won't really have 20 minutes. 'cause
And as far as like the
Dozens
business
of
and
visually
markets,
impaired individuals experience golf.
Might be kind of skinny. We might have to go. Anything you can find that says money or anything about businesses.
Local golf
and maybe the
pros
Berkshire
who are
Hathaway
instructed
stuff. might
Yeah,
be-
adaptive
yeah.
sports specialists on how to guide visually impaired golfers in the game. The Golf Academy
Ben
is the kickoff
Sass's
to the Outlook
editorial.
annual Tee It Up Foresight fundraiser to benefit Outlook
I didn't read
enrichment
the-
programs. Visually impaired participants will receive an hour of golf instruction and practice chipping, putting, and swinging.
I know, there's been times I was speed reading that. When I opened up the World Herald and there's like 50 obituaries, I felt faint.
That is in Elkhorn, Nebraska.
And then my tongue gets tired.
Tournament
I
proceeds.
start
at the
mispronouncing
Outlook
things pretty soon. It's just a mess.
If you have questions or would like more
You did
information about
fine.
signing up, please
You have a
contact
good
Shiloh
voice.
Supra
Here's some
at 402
business and-
504-2609 or visit outlooknebraska.org.
Thank you very much, Jane. Let's return now for hour number 2 of the live reading of the Lincoln Journal-Star and the Omaha World Herald. Once again, turning the microphones over to our wonderful pinch hitters today, Matthew Leaf and Beverly Leidig. Go ahead, folks.
Yes, thank you very much for those kind words. This is Beverly Leidig, and I have an editorial here, actually an opinion. It's an opinion. He's not on the editorial staff of the Lincoln Journal-Star, but he is our United States Senator from Nebraska, Ben Sass. This is his comment. Our local newspapers tell important stories because they document, quote, the good life, unquote. Unfortunately, those storytellers have become targets of another Washington, D.C. folly, an unnecessary trade war. While there is no question that Washington's anti-trade talk is hurting Nebraska's farmers and ranchers, others are starting to feel the pain too. Hardworking families and seniors on fixed incomes will be squeezed. Manufacturers, welders, truck drivers, and other small businesses across the state will be hit, including newspapers in Nebraska. Earlier this year, the U.S. Department of Commerce announced a massive tariff on the paper used to print newspapers across the country. A sole paper mill in Washington state petitioned the federal government to implement a tariff against paper imported from Canada. That means skyrocketing costs for your local newspaper, and that the desires of one West Coast company could hamper the entire newsprint industry. Even though the way we consume media is changing, Nebraska's newspapers have long been a fundamental part of our communities. It would be tragic for unnecessary and costly tariffs to change that. The reality of these tariffs is this: they do not just hurt newspapers as a local business or employer. They hit our communities and they hit you. Local newspapers tell the story of our state. When you pick one up, you often find the best of Nebraska. You see Nebraskans helping neighbors. You find a recap of last Friday's football game. You find birth, graduation, and local government notices. You find the smile of a young girl who cannot wait to see her picture in the paper. You probably even find a conversation starter for your early morning coffee in town. And of course, you find lots and lots of important Husker football news. You find the stories that make Nebraska a special place. Yet, the pages that you hold, the actual physical paper, are telling another story that Nebraskans keep sharing with me. We need lower tariffs and more trade because we all benefit. A little common sense and some basic economics tell us what Nebraskans already know. Free trade is good. Nebraskans, farmers, and ranchers feed the world. It is our state's calling. And because the backbone of Nebraska's economy is agriculture, we have been doing a lot of winning. But as we enter planting season, uncertainty is breathing down our necks. A volatile market created by escalating and retaliatory tariffs is hurting our ability to sell our goods to hungry customers outside the United States. It is simple. Tariffs are taxes on American families, and trade is a win-win, stuff America used to agree on. The defense of sensible pro-trade policies is not about who is living in the White House. This is about upholding the fundamentals, benefits, and truths of trade, and nobody does that better than Nebraskans. Washington should let us keep winning. Local papers will tell our story. Matthew?
Thank you, Bev. And here's an editorial from the Omaha World Herald. Elementary classrooms open to the main hallway, school offices with no line of sight to the front entry. Schools filled to capacity with hundreds of additional students projected to enter the pipeline in coming years. Classrooms and curriculum created under yesterday's standards, but falling short of the needs for today. Those shortcomings lie behind Papillion La Vista Community Schools' decision to ask district voters for authority to issue $109.9 million in bonds in this spring's election. The district lists 3 priorities that prompted the request: improving safety and security, preparing for growth, and enhancing quality of education. Papillion La Vista lies in the fastest growing part of the Omaha metro area. The district has chalked up steady growth over the last decade. Both of its high schools are at capacity, and more than 500 additional students are forecast to enter the schools within the next 5 years. Nearly 1,000 more children are expected at the elementary school level as housing developments continue to spring up. The bond issue would fund projects including these: $29.4 million to renovate and upgrade 5 elementary schools: Carriage Hill, G. Stanley Hall, Rumsey Station, Anderson Grove, and La Vista West. 4 of the schools were built when open concept classrooms were in vogue. In those days of deep concern about student safety, the district wants to remodel those buildings to provide walls and doors on every classroom. $12 million for a new elementary school. Also $6.3 million to add classrooms at Liberty Middle School, increasing capacity to about 750 students, similar to the district's 2 other middle schools. $6 million for future school sites, including a potential 3rd high school. $1.7 million for technology infrastructure. $53.5 million to expand Papillion La Vista High School and Papillion La Vista South, adding capacity for another 200 students at each location. Dedicated classroom space at the high schools for STEM classes, meaning science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Expanded space for fine arts and physical education space, and bigger cafeterias. Lighting would be added at Papillion La Vista High's artificial turf practice field. The Papillion La Vista South parking lot and track would be resurfaced, and stadium parking would be expanded. Classrooms at older schools would be enlarged to better suit today's learning environment. The bond issue would add 4 cents to the property tax levy at its peak, adding $60 annually to the tax bill on a $150,000 home. District officials developed the proposal over a 2-year period. They conducted a visioning exercise to gather input from students, staff, and community members. They visited other areas to seek out best practices in high schools. District leaders commendably retooled their plan based on constituent feedback. Projects envisioned by this $109.9 million bond issue address worthy issues for Papillion La Vista Community Schools. We recommend voting yes on the May 15th ballot. Bev?
Thank you, Matthew. This is a letter to the editor of the Lincoln Journal-Star from, let's get the person's name here first, Raina Collins of Lincoln, who writes this. What makes a good county treasurer? It's not making promises you can't keep. I think it's a woman with professional training, experience, and integrity. 24 years in student accounts at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln has provided Rachel Garver the ability and experience needed to be Lancaster County Treasurer. Rachel believes that good customer service starts at the top. She embraces technology, but still wants to make sure the county treasurer's office accommodates people who don't have access to technology. She's not just capable with numbers, she's a good person who cares about her community. Her Methodist minister dad and school teacher mom raised her to be honest. I'm having a little trouble with my computer here, folks, so bear with me. Her Methodist minister dad and school teacher mom raised her to be honest and involved. She's active in her church and in our community and has been for many years. Please vote for Rachel Garber for Lancaster County Treasurer. She'll run her treasurer's office with unsurpassed expertise, ethics, and humanity. And that was a letter from reader Raina Collins of Lincoln. Here's another letter from Brad Carper of Lincoln. Manipulating the hysteria surrounding recent school shootings into the impetus, local officials and Lincoln Public Schools are attempting to push through the creation of another joint public agency. This is merely a facade to do an end run around existing levy limits imposed by the state on LPS. Officials can rightfully claim that taxes would not be raised, as these would be additional taxes added to the burgeoning load we already endure. LPS wants $2 million for 6 new school resource officers, a cost of more than $330,000 per officer. But wait, it's not just hiring a new officer. LPS says it also needs funding for more school programs. LPS benefited from tens of millions of additional dollars from our recent property revaluations. Why isn't the $2 million paid for with that? LPS is a perpetual spending machine, continuously using the catchphrase, quote, "it's for our children," unquote. Show us proof that funding more resource officers will actually make the children safer. If spending more money was proven to benefit the children, then LPS should have a teacher and security officer for each student. What's that, you say? The cost would be too much? LPS has never said that, and it never will. Prepare for an onslaught of slick marketing ads from proponents of a JPA. They've already paid an attorney $27,000 to help push things through. Paraphrasing, the ads will claim that LPS doesn't know where its next meal is coming from. Poor LPS. Without another JPA, they're just going to have to eke by with only the $421 million they have in this year's budget. And that letter, once again, was from Brad Carper of Lincoln. Matthew, what do you have today?
Thank you. Well, we have from the Omaha World Herald Public Pulse. Here's a letter from Carol Friesen of Wallace, Nebraska. The state primary election is around the corner, May 15th. This election matters, and we need to make our votes count. The people's voice is found in primary elections, and not just when a seat is empty, but especially when there is an incumbent, and that incumbent is in your own party. Why? Well, the odds are stacked against anyone running against an incumbent. Incumbents most likely have established connections flush with investment money, and state party leaders are going to throw their power and funds toward the incumbent. The incumbent counts on your inaction and attitude of, well, they haven't seemed to screw anything up too badly, but are they giving their best? Are they meeting and exceeding your expectations? Why are we putting up with people who are self-serving and not public-serving? The real grassroots movements are found in the primaries because the special interests are usually for the incumbent. Do some research before you vote. To be transparent, I am conservative supporting Todd Watson for the U.S. Senate for his conservative constitutional stands on issues. There are some great people this year challenging our incumbents. Do some research, make your vote count. And that letter was from Carol Friesen of Wallace, Nebraska. And a letter from, in the Public Pulse from Mike Scow of Omaha. I received my health care at the Omaha VA Medical Center, and the services there are second to none. Quality of health care is very good. Doctors from the University of Nebraska Medical Center frequently care for veterans at the Omaha VA facility. I have had several surgeries for various medical conditions. The surgeons were from UNMC, and they worked in conjunction with the medical providers at the VA. As far as the prescriptions go, we can always order them at the facility, and we are there and pick them up at the same day. Mail order is an option, even if we order the meds 10 days prior to running out. We usually receive them in just a few days. I have been assigned one primary care physician for over 4 years now, and I have seen only him. If specialists are needed, your primary care doctor will set it up just like doctors do outside the VA. The VA in Omaha has been rated as one of the best in the country, and with the new on-site clinic coming soon, I believe the services will be even better. As a Vietnam-era veteran, I wholeheartedly appreciate all the services that are provided to me and all the veterans at our local VA hospital. I would not count on Washington, D.C. politicians to do anything that would benefit the average American citizen in regards to affordable health care. That letter from Mike Scow of Omaha in the Omaha World Herald Public Pulse. Bev?
Well, it's 11:19, and we're going to move now to our to our living today's sections and our entertainment. And I have a story here from the Lincoln Journal-Star. It happened quickly. A calico cat in the back seat of the SUV traveling west on Interstate 80 near Gona, paw on the window control. Jessica D'Arienzo was driving the Toyota, and her husband Larry had unbuckled his seatbelt to grab the couple's cat, Abby. Jess looked back and swerved, Sandy Monahan said from her home in upstate New York. On April 6th, the D'Arienzos were en route from New York to Colorado, where Larry was starting a new job, said Monahan, a relative of the couple. Larry, 33, died in the rollover accident. Jessica was injured and hospitalized for several days before returning home to New York. The cat escaped. Law enforcement at the scene saw it run into a field near mile marker 376, Monahan said. At the time, we were focused on all the matters at hand and didn't think to start looking. My niece really would like to find that cat. The aunt has done her best from 1,100 miles away, posting photos of the lost animal to Facebook pages in the area. And Nebraska animal lovers have assisted. The people of Nebraska are the nicest people, she said. This nice lady went out and looked for it. They put signs up. Heather Held was that nice lady. The Lincoln woman is active in animal rescue, and along with a Milford woman, scoured the area where the cat was last seen and posted flyers as far away as Seward. She plans to renew a search for Abby before the weekend. I'm hoping to get some traps set, and maybe with a little luck and some blessings, we might catch her. Monahan is grateful. Larry had given Jessica the cat nearly a year ago to keep her company while he traveled back and forth to Colorado for his work, the aunt said. They were just a beautiful, darling couple. They were just sort of starting their lives. And there's a side note here about this incident. On April 6th, Jessica and Larry D'Arienzo of upstate New York were involved in a rollover accident west of Seward that killed Larry, 33. The couple's cat, Abby, ran into a field and has not been found. Relatives are hoping the cat can be found and returned to Jessica. Matthew?
Thank you, Bev. And here's a story from the Midland section of the Omaha World Herald. To Arshan and Jahan Adam, their mom is the ultimate superhero. Like Wonder Woman, combating supervillains, Nina Nizar fights to find a cure for Jansen's metaphyseal chondrodysplasia, a rare progressive form of dwarfism that affects her and the boys. They were diagnosed in 2010. They are 3 of the fewer than 30 people around the globe who have been diagnosed with Jansen's, which is caused by a genetic mutation. While Jansen's isn't terminal, it comes with chronic pain and has required dozens of corrective surgeries to straighten weak bones that grow in curves. The disease also can lead to kidney problems caused by the high levels of calcium in the bloodstream. I know what it's like to be a child and deal with this disease, Nizar said in a 2017 interview with the World Herald. I don't want to watch them go through that. It makes this all the more painful. Her dedication and love hasn't gone unnoticed. Nizar was named the 2018 Nebraska Mother of the Year by the American Mothers in Nebraska last month at the state capitol. 2 other Nebraska women were nominated for the award. Nizar advocates for not only her boys, but for others with rare disorders. It's always uplifting to know that your lone journey has moved someone in some way. Being an advocate for a disease that affects less than 30 people worldwide and yet be recognized for your efforts makes me feel like I'm doing something right, she said. In 2015, she brought her family to Elkhorn from Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. She regularly corresponds with doctors, researchers, and pharmaceutical companies, and in 2017, founded the Janssens Foundation, a nonprofit that works to increase awareness about the disease and raise funds to support further research. She's also an ambassador for other groups that advocate for those with rare disorders. Diane Conway, a phlebotomist at Children's Hospital and Medical Center in Omaha, nominated Nizar. Nizar said Conway has been involved in her son's care, and the nomination moved her to tears. The award, which was established in 1935, was made to provide an inspiration to the nation who would represent a mother's unconditional love, inner strength, and courage, according to the organization's website. The nomination trickled down from the national level to the state level, where it reached Lene Tryon, the president of the Nebraska Mothers chapter. She then contacted Nizar, who filled out a portfolio which included letters of reference, Nizar's philosophy on parenting, her biography, and volunteer activities she does that help mothers and children. Nizar was very on fire with what she believed. Her heart was into it, Tryon said. Her whole life was involved in it. She's dedicated in figuring out what she and her kids had and finding a solution that will help not just her family, but a lot of people. Nizar called the recognition a victory, not just for me, but for all those with disabilities who struggle every day to prove how we may not be perfect. No one really is, but we are great. Nizar attended the American Mothers National Convention in Washington, D.C. last week. During the ceremony, the Janssens Foundation was awarded a $1,000 grant, Nizar said. The entire experience was an inspiring one, she said. To meet ordinary women from around the country who have seen a challenge or problem and risen up to make a change is truly awe-inspiring, she said. No matter the color, race, or ability, the narrative of personal courage and bravado connects us all. A mother's love can truly change the world. Bev?
Thanks, Matthew. We're going to go now to the column in the Journal Star, Ask the Doctors. And there's the first letter to the doctors. Dear doctor, my older brother was experiencing abdominal pain and nausea, and when he went to his doctor, he was told he had a hot appendix. But instead of surgery, he was treated with antibiotics. Is this safe? Shouldn't his appendix have been removed? Dear reader, you're correct that surgery has long been the go-to method of dealing with appendicitis. The first successful appendectomy was actually performed in London in 1735 to remove the perforated appendix of a young boy who had swallowed a pin. And this was pre-anesthesia, so you can imagine what a grueling procedure that must have been. Since that time, surgical techniques have advanced to the point where by the late 1900s, traditional open surgery had given way to the less invasive laparoscopic approach. Now medicine is revisiting the idea of treating the existing infection in the appendix, that's where the antibiotics come in, rather than preemptively removing the organ. The appendix is a thin tubular pouch, about 2 to 4 inches long in adults, which descends from the colon on the lower right side of the abdomen. Since it has no obvious purpose, it has been the subject of scientific speculation pretty much from the moment it was first identified. However, according to the most recent findings, the appendix is more complex and more important than was previously thought. Research shows it's the site of vital cellular activity during fetal development. In adults, it appears to have a role in immune function. An inflamed or infected appendix is a medical emergency. That's because if left untreated, the buildup of infectious materials inside of it can cause it to become perforated or even burst. If that happens, the contents of the appendix will spill into the abdominal cavity, which can lead to serious complications like periodontitis. Medical terms are not my strong suit, folks, so just bear with me here. In case of a burst or perforated appendix, surgery is always the primary treatment. Not only does the appendix need to be removed, the abdominal cavity must be cleansed to prevent infection. When the appendix is merely inflamed, though, and when CT scans confirm that the organ is not in danger of bursting, treating the existing infection with antibiotics becomes an option. Patients say they opt for this treatment because they want to avoid the risks of surgery and the resulting time spent recovering from the procedure. They are also drawn to the lower cost of the antibiotics option. And while studies support the use of antibiotics in treating uncomplicated acute appendicitis, the approach has its drawbacks. A study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 2015 compared the outcomes of patients who underwent appendectomies with those who underwent treatment with antibiotics. In the group that had the surgery, all but one of the 273 surgical patients had successful outcomes. Among the non-surgical group, 70 of the 256 patients, that's 27%, had a reoccurrence and required surgery within the next 12 months. Still, for the other 186 patients, antibiotic therapy spared them the risks and costs of surgery. Of course, every person's circumstance is unique. We're assuming your brother had a conversation with his doctor about the best treatment for him, and we would encourage others to do so as well. Matthew?
Thank you, Bev. And here's from the Omaha World Herald Living section, the Ask Amy column. Dear Amy, my 28-year-old college-educated adult child has a 3-year-old child who has no relationship at all with his other biological parent. My adult child is currently in a live-in relationship with another person. My spouse and I see our grandchildren often, both willingly and because we're needed to help with childcare during some work hours. The significant other spends a fair amount of time alone with my grandchild. I've seen and heard horror stories of abusive boyfriends and girlfriends and the harm they can commit not only to their significant others, but to the children involved in those relationships. I ask my grandchildren from time to time if so-and-so is nice to them. Every time the answer is basically this: no, they are not. No, they spank me. No, I get spanked on my butt and my cheek. I have passed this information on to my adult child, and the response is usually the same. A child's parent doesn't believe it. My feeling is this: a 3-year-old cannot lie about something like that. What do I do? So from Worried Graham, Dear Worried, Amy responds. The correct response to this report is never to assume that the child is lying, but to investigate and discern what is behind those statements. Everything your grandchild says should be taken seriously. If he reports being hit, you must follow through. The parent should not accuse him of lying, but instead, every adult should try to find out why he is reporting this. Reflexively, accusing them of lying calls this parent's instincts into serious question. There is no question that this child is in the high-risk category, no contact with one biological parent, and the other parent has moved another unrelated adult into the home. The statistics concerning the risk to children when a parent cohabits with a non-relative are shocking. According to an oft-quoted 2005 study published in the Journal of American Academy of Pediatrics, children living in households with unrelated adults are nearly 50 times as likely to die of inflicted injuries as children living with two biological parents. Over the course of the 8-year study in households with unrelated adults, most perpetrators, 83.9%, were the unrelated adult household member. 6.5% of perpetrators were the biological parent of the child. Even if this child is not in physical danger, his statements indicate distress. You and your spouse should do everything possible to get to know the domestic partner, take on more child care if possible. Urge the child's parent to take this very seriously, and if the parent doesn't, you should report this to CPS. Also, enroll the child in a quality nursery school or Head Start program. Early childhood education will have a profound impact. Experienced teachers can mark his progress and are also mandated reporters. Bev?
Oh, now you caught me off guard here. I was searching for another story for us, and I got into a section that we haven't got to yet. Do you have another thing you can read?
I do have some hints from Heloise.
There you go.
Here we go. From Heloise. My mother had to clock in at the doctor's office and was dismayed to find that she was required to use a computer mouse to sign forms. She objected, telling the staff member that she didn't know how to use a mouse, and the woman told her to do the best she could. It resulted in scribbling instead of a signature, which was humiliating and embarrassing to my mother. I wrote a letter to the hospital system asking them to consider providing actual paper forms for people who are unfamiliar with technology. Medical professionals, please consider the abilities and feelings of your elderly and disabled patients when deciding how to have paperwork signed. That's from April C. And Heloise responds, great effort in fighting for your mom. Hugs to both of you. Also from Heloise, my concern about tipping is that it is now a requirement, not a choice. I don't care for the technology as at the tables for paying your bill. If you don't eat out often, you end up asking the server for help in using it. I only want to tip on good service, and I don't like the server standing over me while I figure out how much I want to give. Also, when I give the server $20 to pay my bill, the server should never ask, do you need change? It's a letter from Daphne in Vancouver, Washington. And here's a hint. Dear Heloise, I have an old toothbrush next to my dryer, and when I take out a load, I clean my filter with it. Easy to remember and easy to use. That's from Rosemary W. in Omaha. Deb?
Okay, we're going to go now to our business and market story. Here's one about summer gas prices. The prospect of paying $3 a gallon for gas is starting to rear its ugly head again. While average prices remain well below that level, some local stations are starting to sell certain grades of gas for more than $3 a gallon. For example, according to GasBuddy.com, several stations in Lincoln are selling regular unleaded gas without ethanol for more than $3 a gallon, with a top price of $3.12 a gallon Monday morning. AAA reported last week that 13% of gas stations nationwide were charging $3 per gallon or more. The U.S. daily average for regular gasoline is now $2.81 per gallon. That's up from about $2.39 per gallon a year ago, according to Oil Price Information Service. State and local prices are still lower a bit, but still considerably higher than last year. The average for all of Nebraska as of Monday morning was $2.67 a gallon, according to AAA, and the Lincoln area average was about $2.71. Both of those are up about 30 cents from a year ago. This will be the most expensive driving season since 2014, said Tom Kloza, Global Head of Energy Analysis for Oil Price Information Service. One big reason is the price of U.S. crude oil, which has been on a mostly steady incline since last June, and last week hit $68.64, the highest since December 2014. Benchmark U.S. crude closed Friday at $68.10. Oil prices near $70 shouldn't put the brakes on economic growth, however. While they're boosting costs for some sectors of the economy, the energy sector and related industries have more money to spend on equipment and workers. But higher oil prices are certainly an inconvenience for drivers, especially those with lower incomes. The good news is, both at the global level and the U.S. level, this is occurring at a time when growth is fairly robust, said Nariman Bhavesh, chief economist at IHS Markit. But consumers as whole will be hurt, mostly because gasoline prices are going up. Several factors have helped drive oil prices higher. A wave of global economic growth has driven up demand for oil. At the same time, production cutbacks initiated by OPEC last year have helped whittle down oil supplies. In the U.S., oil supplies were running 1.1 million barrels lower at the start of this summer's driving season, which runs from April through September, than a year ago, according to U.S. Energy Information Administration. That has amplified the typical increase in gas pumps seen this time of year. Pump prices normally rise as demand increases from families going on vacation and taking to the highways on road trips. Already, U.S. consumer demand for gasoline hit a record high for the month of April, according to the EIA. Still, prices remain well off from 2008, when crude oil prices jumped above $130 per barrel and average retail gas prices surged to an all-time high of $4.11 per gallon. Matthew?
Thank you, Bev. And here's from the Omaha World Herald, the investment column by John Dorfman, who is the chairman of Dorfman Value Investments, LLC in Newton, Upper Falls, Massachusetts. And he writes, "It's a trifle embarrassing that one of my most successful stock picking screens is so simple. My Old Faithful screen looks for stocks that may not be spectacular in any one respect, but are good in many respects. I've written columns about Old Faithful stocks 15 times, beginning in 1999. The average one-year return has been 22.3%, compared with 5.9% for the Standard & Poor's 500 index over the same 15 periods. My Old Faithful picks have been profitable 12 times out of 15, and have also been beaten the index 12 times. But my selections from a year ago were an epic fail. They dropped 4.8%, even as the S&P advanced 13.9%. Worst offender was Signet Jewelers Limited, SIG, down 37.1%. Net1 UEPS Technologies Limited and Biglari Holdings Incorporated also did poorly. Bear in mind that my column recommendations are theoretical and don't reflect actual trades, trading costs, or taxes. Their results shouldn't be confused with the performance of portfolios I manage for clients, and past performance doesn't predict future results. Usually, Old Faithful churns out 20 to 30 candidates. I generally pick about 5 to recommend. My Old Faithful screening criteria are: the stock must be traded in the U.S. with a market value of $250 million or more. Debt must be less than stockholders' equity. The stock must not be too expensive, measured 3 ways: a maximum of 15 times earnings, 2 times book value, corporate net worth per share, and 2 times revenue. Earnings growth should average at least 10% in the past 5 years, and the return on equity, a measure of profitability, should be 15% or more. And here are this year's picks. Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, NV, based in London, gets less attention than General Motors, Ford, and Volkswagen, but GM has posted losses recently. Ford has high debt, and Volkswagen is still dealing with the diesel emission scandal. By comparison, Fiat Chrysler looks pretty good. Among the company's brands are Dodge, Ram, Jeep, Alfa Romeo, and Maserati, in addition to the two brands, unlike its major competitors, it clears all the old faithful hurdles. The stock sells for 8 times earnings and 1.4 times book value. Cirrus Logic Incorporated, the big risk is over-dependence on Apple Incorporated. Cirrus specializes in audio chips and gets a huge percentage of its revenue from Apple's iPhone. The risk is that Apple could change its supplier or bring that business in-house. A corollary risk is that Apple could squeeze Cirrus's profit margin. That has already happened to some degree. I feel these risks are tolerable, and I think Cirrus stock is a bargain at present valuation of 13 times earnings. On the small side of the spectrum is Covenant Transportation Group Incorporated, a Class A trucking company with headquarters in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Covenant went through rough times from 2006 to 2011, losing money in 5 of those 6 years. Debt ballooned up to 285% of equity, but in the past 6 years, it has made a profit each year, usually an increasing profit, and the balance sheet is in better shape. Truckers had a hot year last year, and Covenant shares were up 52%. So the main question on investors' minds is if the good times have already rolled, with the stock selling for 9 times recent earnings, I think there is room for more gains. I will bring back one pick from a year ago. Sinopec Shanghai Petrochemical Company wasn't a culprit in Old Faithful's bad year, as it rose 23.7%. Shanghai has made a profit in 12 of the past 15 years, and the past 2 years were its best. Returns on equity have been running above 20%, yet partly because of China's market is cheaper than the U.S. market, the stock sells for only about 10 times earnings. Yes, all Chinese stocks are risky, but then again, all stocks are risky. And CVS Health Corp, recommended recently in this column, has increased its earnings at better than 14% annual clip in the past 5 years. The worry is that debt, currently 72% of equity, if CVS goes through with its plan to acquire Aetna, it will have to borrow a whole lot more. I dislike debt. However, I like the idea of combining a huge drugstore chain with a major health insurer. I think the merger makes sense, so it would be worth CVS going into hawk for a while. And disclosure from John Dorfman, I own Apple personally, and for several of my clients, I own CVS and Sinopec Shanghai Petrochemical for a couple of clients. And that's the investment column from John Dorfman.
Yep. Thank you, Matthew. We're going to go now to sports. From Louisville, Kentucky, Chad Brown acknowledges he's lacked either the right horse or the right luck to win the Kentucky Derby. Until now, Brown almost gushes when he talks about Good Magic, who might position him to finally break through in Saturday's 144th Run for the Roses at Churchill Downs. If the Colts name alone doesn't suggest a positive vibe, then consider his resume, which includes last year's Breeders' Cup Juvenile and the Eclipse Award as the top 2-year-old male. Good Magic is hitting his stride at the right time, entering horse racing's marquee event after winning the Bluegrass Stakes at Keeneland on April 7th. 5 career starts have yielded 2 wins, 2 seconds, and a third for Good Magic, allowing Brown to envision winning horse race's crown jewel after falling short 4 previous times. Brown would like to remove himself from conversations about which up-and-coming trainer is due to break through. We have to think of that with all the opportunities that keep coming our way. We have a good shot of doing this, said Brown, 39. Whether that happens or not remains to be seen. I'll say this, for me, this is our best chance. Seems that way anyway. Brown earned his first Triple Crown race victory in last year's Preakness with Cloud Computing before Breeders' Cup wins with Good Magic, and the filly Rushing Fall helped claim his 2nd consecutive Eclipse Award as top trainer. His success has stoked a belief that beating 19 other horses over 1 1/4 mile is just a matter of time and opportunity. Matthew?
All right, thank you, Bev. And Nebraska has some unexpected competition for 7-foot Argentine basketball prospect Francisco Cafaro. After visiting Nebraska, Georgia Tech, and St. Mary's last week, Cafaro got a late invitation to tour one more campus, Virginia, the overall #1 seed in March's NCAA tournament. Sources said Cafaro has been playing at the Australian Institute of Sport on an NBA Global Academy team, visited Virginia on Monday. Also on Monday, the Huskers finished paperwork to officially land Robert Morris, sophomore, a transfer guard. Deshaun Burke, the 6'4", 180-pound guard, was second-team All-Northeast Conference, averaging 17.6 points and 5.8 rebounds. NU, too, is preparing for a visit at midweek from 6'5", 190-pound guard Amir Harris, Hagerstown, Maryland, a one-time Rhode Island commit. One topic that didn't produce news Monday was the search for an assistant coach. Nebraska's coach Tim Miles said in an interview that he is continuing to do homework on at least 4 candidates and declined to discuss any names or confirm any unsourced speculation. As for Berg, he will sit out 2018-19 as a transfer, then have 2 years of eligibility. He picked NU over Marquette, Pittsburgh, and St. John's. With perimeter scorers such as James Palmer and Glenn Watson set to leave Nebraska in a year, Burke liked the plan laid out for him by Miles and assistant Michael Lewis. Michael did a good job of getting in early, Miles said. When doing my research, I was really impressed by his numbers. Then watching him play, I really liked his game. We were able to get a home visit to Orange, New Jersey. The whole family was there, and we showed them our game plan on how we have handled the redshirt year with our other successful transfers. Soon after the home visit, Burke and his mother and uncle visited Lincoln and loved it. It was really big to get his commitment, Miles said. When you're getting ready to lose guys like Glenn and James, you need somebody who isn't a true freshman and has had to make tough baskets in big game environments. Miles said Burke is comfortable on the perimeter with ball in hand or working off screens to slash to the basket or set up jumpers. He was a candidate for his league's Defensive Player of the Year award, 2 after leading the NEC in steals at 2.1 a game. He needs to shoot the 3 better, Miles said, but he's really quick and rebounds like crazy. He is very, very quick to the ball and smart. Nebraska has 2 scholarships left, with Burke's signing becoming official. And Nebraska wrestling coach Mark Manning announced Monday that 2-time All-American Zeke Moisey will transfer to Nebraska from West Virginia. The 125-pound Moisey will have immediate eligibility. He owns a career record of 84-37, reaching the NCAA championships all 3 years he competed. Took a medical redshirt in 2016-17 seasons. We're extremely excited to have Zeke join our program, Manning said in a press release. He comes to Nebraska as a 2-time All-American and a national runner-up. Zeke can be very instrumental in our team's success next year and will provide leadership in the lighter weight classes. Moisey was a national runner-up at 125 pounds in the 2015 NCAA championships. He withdrew from the tournament because of injury in 2016 and finished 8th in 2018. Bev?
Sophomore Andrew Bunch's emergence as a viable option at quarterback was among the most intriguing storylines of Nebraska's recently completed spring season. The story is even more interesting when you consider his bloodlines. His father, David Bunch, was a walk-on receiver at Nebraska during the 1970s, but that's just a start, according to David Bunch. If you go way back, both my father and my grandfather worked on Memorial Stadium's construction at different times, he said. We have photos of them working on the stadium over the years, all the way back, probably into the 1940s. Construction of the stadium was initially completed in the 1920s, but it has undergone several phases of expansion and renovation. David's grandfather, Worley Scott Bunch, founded the W.S. Bunch Company in Omaha, an industrial commercial construction operation that helped with stadium upgrades. So think about the pride the Bunch family must have felt April 21st when Andrew completed 8 of 14 passes for 89 yards and a touchdown in the red-white spring game before 86,818 spectators in the stadium his family helped build. Matthew?
All right, thank you, Bev. Well, UNO's basketball roster has gotten bigger, both in size and in number. Former Norfolk standout Logan Storm and Wichita, Kansas product Brett Barney will join the Mavericks this fall as Division I transfers. Storm, a 6'8" forward, will have to sit out an NCAA-mandated transfer year after redshirting this past season in his only year at UC Davis. He'll have 3 years of eligibility remaining while at UNO. Storm averaged 16.8 points and 9.1 rebounds in 2016-17 as Norfolk captured its first Class A title in 30 years. Barney, a 6'9" center, has spent the past 3 years at Wichita State after going to prep school at Sunrise Christian following his graduation from Mays South High School near Wichita. He spent 3 seasons as a walk-on with the Shockers, redshirting for the first one, and has 2 years of eligibility remaining. Barney will be immediately eligible for the Mavs this upcoming season. And one of Nebraska's 2019 football pledges has posted an athletic performance last week that ranks among the best in the nation. York's Garrett Snodgrass tested in the 99th percentile of all participating football athletes in his class at Nike's The Opening Regional Camp in Dallas last week. Players are tested in the 40-yard dash, vertical jump, the 20-yard shuttle, and the kneeling powerball throw while factoring in height and weight. 6'3", 217-pound Snodgrass recorded 4.8 seconds in the 40 and 4.25 seconds in the shuttle while jumping 30.4 inches in the vertical and throwing the Powerball 40.5 feet. He revealed the scores with a photo of his report on his Twitter account. 8 of the opening's 12 regionals have posted their results from this spring, while 2 have not, including Dallas, and 2 have yet to be held. 86 athletes have scored better than Snodgrass, according to the event's national leaderboard, but only 6 of those are listed as tight ends. Bev?
It was almost like flipping a switch. The Lincoln Stars, last in the USHL Western Conference in late January, made the 2017-18 season a memorable one for first-year head coach Cody Shupp, advancing to the playoffs for the 17th time in franchise history. The Stars turned the season around by winning 20 of their final 25 games to finish 35-23-1-1, good enough for 5th in the Western Conference. Lincoln went on to defeat Sioux Falls 21-1 in the final round of the playoffs before being knocked out by Waterloo for the second time in 3 years. It was a good year for the Lincoln Stars, Chubb said. If you look back over the last few years, this is one of, if not the best year they have had in a while. At the same time, I think it's important we view it as what it is, successful, but something we are looking to build on and are not satisfied with. Matthew?
All right, thank you, Bev. Iowa hit 5 home runs, including 3 from Mike Freeman, and Omaha didn't score until the 8th inning Monday in a 10-3 loss to the Iowa Cubs. Iowa starter Adbert Alzole took a no-hitter into the 6th inning when Storm Chasers shortstop Adalberto Mondesi managed an infield single. Alzole held the Storm Chasers scoreless over 7 innings while recording 6 strikeouts and allowing just 1 hit. Freeman opened the scoring for Iowa with a solo home run in the 3rd inning. He also went deep in the 7th and 8th to finish with 5 RBIs. Storm Chasers scored all their runs in the top of the 8th inning. Ramon Torres hit a single with the bases loaded to drive in 2 runs, and the Chasers cut it to 4-3 on a wild pitch. Omaha continues its series at Iowa at 6:38 p.m. Today. Storm Chasers right-hander Heath Philmeyer will face righty Dwayne Underwood. Bev?
I'm going to look at this date in baseball. I always think these are fascinating, how many cool things seem to happen on the same day. I know they go through and pick out good ones, but this is a pretty good day for baseball. In 1884, Toledo's Moses Walker became the first black player in the major leagues, appearing in the Blue Stockings' 5-1 loss to Louisville. In 1901, Herm McFarland hit the first grand slam in American League history, powering the Chicago White Sox to a 19-9 rout of Detroit. The Tigers committed an AL record 12 errors, 10 by the infield.
Ouch.
In 1906, John Lush of the Philadelphia Phillies pitched a no-hitter at Brooklyn, beating the Dodgers 6-0. In 1920, Joe Oshiger, I hope I got that name right, of the Boston Braves and Leon Cadore of the Brooklyn Dodgers pitched 26 innings each in a 1-1 tie, the longest game by innings in Major League history. And on this date in 1920, Babe Ruth hit his first home run as a Yankee and the 50th of his career, sending New York past Boston 6-0 at the Polo Grounds.
All right.
And with that, it looks like it's about time for us to go. I want to say thank you to Matthew for reading with me today. I enjoyed working with him, and I hope that we get invited back. So this is Bev Leidig signing off.
And this is Matthew Leaf.
Thank you very much, Beverly Leidig and Matthew Leaf. You guys did a wonderful job. Every bit as good as our normal readers, Don Van Moorland.
Oh, geez, so full of it.
We really appreciate it. Enjoy the lovely weather that's coming our way. Looks like later this afternoon.
Oh, yeah, weather. Oh.
You're tuned to the Radio Talking
Well,
Book
that was
Network
good.
on
Good,
Nebraska.
fun to read with you.
I enjoyed it. Thank you for your guidance.
Yeah, you know, when we got started, I thought, oh shoot, I forgot to give him the sign, but you don't even need it. No, a lot of times when you read somebody, when they're getting to the end of their story, they'll put their hand over it.
Oh,
But you did fine. I mean,
I try to pick up on cues, but sometimes they're.
Well, if I go like this, you'll know it's your turn.
Oh, she stopped reading. Oh.
Well, man, that was good that you filled in on there because I had nothing left.
There were a couple of the first story that you read had a little bit more in the Journal Star than in the World Herald.
Is just
I think the World Herald cut some down.
And I think maybe, and then I lost my screen at the bottom here.
Oh, really?
It had, you remember you noticed it's gone now. So I had to start using this. Yeah, it's just not
really?
down there. See, I don't know. I probably, can you see it?
There's a little tab there. Is that it?
That little red?
That little red tab.
Yeah, I probably. There you go.
Okay, I see. I saw that there. Okay,
Well, good thing I had this.
I'm not. Computer programs they sometimes scare me. I just don't want to.
Well, what do they change every single day? I mean, you think you've got something figured out, and then they do something new to you. But
that's my. I agree with that opinion. They should never change anything. Once I learn something, I don't want it to ever change.
You're too young to think that way. That's like old people think.
No, I think everything. It's like nothing should ever change. Just stay the same.
Yeah. Well, it's how. Well,
See you later.
Oh, he's back in there. I know Ryan paces a lot. I'm going to ask him before making him nervous because I can watch him pace in there.
I wasn't too sure about that investment column.
That's one thing I was going to tell you. If you get to a point where it's like this isn't, and just cut it where you think it.
Okay.
And also, 5 minutes is about as long as you want to go on a story.
Okay.
And I because it's just.
Unless you're reading about the Huskers, then you can go 5 hours and no one will care.
5 hours? Oh, good.
5 hours, yes. 5 hours of Scott Frost. Good Lord.
Oh goodness. Husker.
It feels like sometimes it lasts for 5 hours. I want the Huskers to win as much as anybody, but sometimes I get tired of hearing them. We're not even to June yet.
No, there's other things going on. Personally, I love to watch the Kentucky Derby. I love it. I love to listen to the crowd and the announcers are
It's
so
different, isn't it, from what we got here? It's a bunch of horses running around. It's cool. Except I bet on it the last 2 years. We had a little office pool, and I lost both times. So.
Well, in Tacoma, my hometown, they're going to have a special event in conjunction with it.
Oh, yeah?
One of the bars in town, she's always got great ideas. There is going to be a stick a stick horse race around the block.
Around the block?
Around the block. Around the block.
So,
And you have to bring your own stick horse,
oh my.
And I think it's going to be
So
hilarious.
you actually have to go outside and
Outside, let people see you do this.
and passing motors are going to.
Well,
What the heck?
it's a good block to go around because there's a park they've got to go
Okay.
through. And anyway, that's how we do the
Well,
Kentucky Derby.
I might have to head to
Oh
Kmart.
yeah, it's gonna be fun.
I'd go.
I'll
I can
come
drive
on.
a stick horse. You don't
You
have to have a
can.
license for that.
Yeah.
You see, I'm not. I will not ride a stick horse. I'll be a spectator. I will be.
Well, it's gonna be funny. I know it's gonna be funny, and there'll be, of course, hats. You have to wear, a good hat when you go to the Derby.
Right.
Yeah, men and women both wear hats. So.
Oh yeah,
Well, it's part of it. Kentucky Bowler.
Yeah.
Derby.
My sister-in-law and her husband went last year. It was on their bucket list thing to do, and she said it was amazing.
the Kentucky Derby.
The whole thing, just
I
the pageantry of it.
that does seem like it would be a place to.
And you can get really close to the horses. Some of these big tracks, you can't really, they go right by you, so
Omaha is a pretty
racy town.
pretty good story with Exarban.
Yeah.
And I think that there was a horse Omaha, which
He's
was
buried there
yeah.
in the middle.
God.
Well, I don't know where they moved him now.
It's right there at the corner of Stinson Park, right?
They left him.
Center. At just I think it's. I know where right there at the southeast corner of Stinson Park. I
Okay,
think,
do
is
they
where-
have the sign and
There's a
everything?
marker
still?
there, yeah.
Yeah, Omaha. I've always loved horse. Well, I don't know hardly any girl 12 years old that wasn't in love with horses, and but I've read a lot of racehorse stories since then, and man, it's incredible. It's quite a business.
They still have racing, I think, at Horseman's Park. Is that where they?
In Grand Island?
I mean, in Omaha.
Oh,
it's where Sportsman's Park, I think.
Yeah. And now I don't, ever since I went on, we used to go to the races when it was at Exarban. It's different than normal gambling if you gamble, because there's time in between to socialize with people, and it's just
Well, I think you can go and you don't have to bet if you don't want to.
No.
You can go just for the for the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's like even casinos, people go to casinos just to eat the food, just for the buffet.
Yeah, that's right.
Or just to be.
But it's not really a place where lots of people, when they're gambling in casinos, you don't really visit with other people unless, you do. But the horse races were, when there's 20 minutes between a race, you get to know people and visit.
Mhm.
There was a guy from Tacoma that had quite a few horses that ran in Omaha and around the circuit. But his daughter had gone to the races to watch some of the horses run the day of the big tornado.
Oh.
In 75. She had a little baby with her, and they saw it coming, and she and her little baby ended up in the jockey's tunnel under the
Oh, really?
to hide from the tornado.
Mm.
Man, were you around here at that
No,
time?
I was not. I've seen photographs of and read stories about it, but I was not.
We still do live north of here about 50 miles, and you could see it from our house. You couldn't see the actual tornado, but you could see the weather down there.
Oh, yeah.
And this is way before a lot of technology in 75, but we had kind of our own little storm come up to the west of our house, and our oldest child was Aaron was 5 months old then. And back in the day before I didn't Pampers, I was trying to change his diaper, and I see this thing coming across the field, this black, and I picked him up and ran to our basement. And what I remember is my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't fasten the pin on the diaper. It scared me so bad. Just hit the side of our house and kept on going, But meanwhile, in Omaha, it was being just torn up.
Yeah.
72nd Street north of Dodge, you can
Yeah.
still tell it. The trees are.
Yeah.
So anyway,
But yeah, I've seen photographs of the tornado. I was not. I think I would have been about 2 years old. So it's not something I.
Yeah.
But
It was a bad year, and in fact, the World Herald always has a year of somebody. They make it the year of, well, I'll say Warren Buffett, or the year of whoever. Well, that year the award went to this is the year of Nebraskans, because not only did they have that horrible tornado, but earlier in the year they had this great big blizzard.
Oh,
It was like the first. I mean, it was like, how much more can we take around here, people?
well, maybe. Well, hopefully today doesn't develop into that.
yeah.
They talk about, I think, hail possibly.
I know, and I have a convertible, and I have to stay down here. I can't go north. I've got an appointment at 4:00, so I've got to hang out down here. And my brother's out of town, or else I'd go hide my car at his house.
Go find a parking garage somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I always look for. Try to get under a I don't know, gasoline station overpass or something. A lot of people try to do that, though. It could be dangerous. You'll try to get in.
Yeah, well, yeah, get there early.
Mhm. So what made you decide to do this?
Oh, I was asked and said,
I mean, how did you get started even with the groceries?
oh, well, I was just wanted to volunteer, and I thought this would be a good volunteer outlet.
Yeah.
So I called Sybil and
Yeah.
said, can I do something? Anything? And so she said yes, and she found the grocery ads.
Yeah. So you do them once a week?
Once a week.
Yeah. Well, she told me you have your fans.
That's what I understand.
That's good.
I don't believe it, but that's what okay.
Yeah. It made me realize when she said, well, we even have a fellow who does the grocery ads, and I thought, I never thought about what it must be like to not be able just to have those normal things to read.
And it is kind of gratifying when because I think, I can understand that, that how to have the grocery ads, and so I have to keep that in mind, that it's not that this is the audience directed. It's not an advertisement for a store or a product.
No, it's a service that the people wouldn't have otherwise.
Reading the ads to people.
I've thought sometimes I ought to read the horoscopes. So people like the horoscopes. They think, well, they don't can't read the horoscopes. You don't hear the horoscopes on TV or anything. But that story about the cat, that made me so sad.
What?
Well, the story I read about the couple that had the crash out in the middle of the state, and their cat. You know what? I bet they'll find that cat. People get interested in those kind of things.
The cat might turn up like a year later, might wind its way home.
Yeah. Yeah, although they're from New York.
Oh, from New York.
But somebody, those kind of stories have a way of turning out. That's why I wanted to read it, because I didn't want to say it, but cats make noise too. And if you hear a cat outside at night, might be that cat looking for somebody to take it in. Our cat does that all the time. Stands outside her bedroom window and meows. He knows which window is our room. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. So anyway, well, suppose I better get going. I'm going to see what's in the reading room, if there's anything I can take home.
Oh.
Sometimes they leave the Wall Street Journal here. So.
Well, and what do we do with the newspapers?
You can just leave those there, and they'll come and take out whatever they want. So it was nice working with you, Matthew.
Thank you, Bev, and maybe I'll get a chance again someday.
Well, I'd say you did really well. Didn't he do good?
I think he did.
Well, Bev was. Well, I appreciate Bev.
You better listen now. She's
Grocery ads are one of my favorite things to do on the station, so I knew.
Well, I try to remember to read the prices of asparagus.
It's only $1.79. I'll use this week. Limit 2 per customer.
Oh, yeah, you better put that out there.
Yeah, well.
It's not $1.79.
Well, I think you better sign him up.
If you
I'll put you on my sub list. All right.
Well, yes, I'm tasting that right now.
That's your treat. That's your thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Beth, for
Oh,
your
yes.
guidance. And
Great working with you.
yes, I enjoyed it.
Good. Have a good day.
You too. I'm going to try to avoid raindrops or hailstones, hopefully not.
I'm like, I don't want my car, it was not a new car, but it's a different car than I had before.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to protect it with this one.
Yeah.
The other one was pretty much beat up, but this one,
Well, last year my roommate bought a car, and that week we had a hailstorm, and so he had hail damage.
oh,
Just a week after he got a new car.
that would break my heart.
And so it wasn't major damage, but it was just a few dings.
I also own a pickup, but I also own two Pontiacs, a bike, a motor scooter, a snow blower, two lawnmowers, and a sailboat. So the pickup has to sit out and come down the highway. You do.
Right.
It's got a few dings on it, though. I noticed the other day, I did feel badly about it, but there's not much I can still for it selling off, which is probably the best idea, sell off a bunch of this stuff.
Well, oh, okay, I'll be back tomorrow.
Oh, yes, you will. Oh, well, I wouldn't even say goodbye, just say, see you
See
later.
ya. Tomorrow. Good day. Bye.
I did, that's good. That's, Beth and I already had that conversation. That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you. some stuff to circulate tonight, but I basically have something ready in the morning, and then I do close it. Everything I need, you know? Contact lens, glasses, gloves.
Oh, yeah, I had that kind of stuff
Yeah.
at your last meeting too,
Yeah.
because I only have one ground, I don't have a travel set,
No,
but I was thinking for.
we have a staff meeting on. I know.
See what you.
Oh, good. Otherwise you wouldn't leave.
Well, I would, yeah, well, I'm sort of like, sure. Piddling.
We have a lot to discuss.
Yes, I'm done now, okay, that was my report. I must say, when I went yesterday for that interview, it might be something that would be interesting for a conversation at some point. It's called Community 360. I've heard of that, and I've read some of the paper about it. It's been around for a very, very long time, and like 26 years, this guy started his PhD in gerontology for Italian, and he went MC. So it's very unique. It's not just a radio traffic service. Okay, I'll let Brad know. Thanks. Okay, bye-bye. I don't know if Ryan's worried about this. Ryan, turn on this.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Will Bob Dowdy be back Friday?
I do not have him as out.
Okay, so not back.
So, well, pretty soon. Oh, no, he's not.
Yeah.
I gotta get that, I'm sorry, I just get his schedule, so I know exactly what.
I think I'll run to the restroom. Is that a top room?
Back to them. And here's something fun for you to do. Look for that frame, so you can hand it to one.
I will.
You know,
I know, I'm just gonna. Where would you like it? Oh, once I get it. If I.
that's what I was wondering when you knew where those were and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just for participating.
She went up, well, on that wall with the practice.
Where's that? Oh. And maybe I'll just put it in trial. This one she's using. No.
That'll help your indigestion.
Yep.
And now, just to top it off.
Gonna go ahead and throw.
Go all the way. Just don't lollygag. What? You know, but, you know, like, we're well and, that's why I think I should actually take that podcast back and drive around the state.
was it 9 o'clock? Yeah. Sounds like small town. It's a big time news. Right, yeah. Get that guy out of there. In our little town back No, it's calendar, right? Or that I and so I can print. And it didn't print, so now I have to do one. Now I gotta go back and change the numbers again. Good grief. Huh. That's strange. Filters. A bit of obsolete. That is kind of what she's doing. Oh, gosh. Radio talking book station. Oh, yeah, hold on, Manchester's calling. But, oh, Becca, Steve Sleeper's on the line for you. There. Let me try this one more time. She was out of her office. Hold on.